All right, we are so excited to be learning from my friend and our neighbor, Taylor Brannock. Taylor is a wildlife technician for the Superior National Forest here on the Kawishiwi Ranger District, and she's been doing that job since 2020. And before moving to Ely, Taylor worked all around the country doing this kind of work. So we are so privileged to be able to learn from her. Please join me in welcoming Taylor to the podium.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. Didn't realize there were so many people going to be here, but I'm so excited that you're all excited to learn about lynx. And so I suppose we'll just get into it. So first, let's identify a lynx. Some defining features are these really big, fluffy feet that allow them to float on top of the snow, and get around really easy in the winter. And they have long tufted ears. You can kind of see in that picture. They have these ruffs on the side of their face. They're very pronounced. Their back legs appear longer than their front legs, so they have like a sloped back when they're walking around. And their tail, they have a little short stubby tail, and the end of it is all black, like it's been dipped in ink. So we can kind of compare this to a bobcat. I know there's a lot of questions about this, so we can look at them side by side. So first of all, their feet are much smaller. They don't get around in the snow as easy as lynx do. They'll sink. Their ruffs are not nearly as defined as the lynx, and their back is more level, as you can see. Their ear tufts are much smaller, and it's a little hard to see in this picture, but their tails are a little bit longer, and just the top end of it is black as opposed to totally black. So we can look at the range a little bit. Bear with me, I just gotta flip through my notes a little bit. So this is kind of the historic range of Canada lynx. They occupy boreal forests. And this is more historic, but now they're kind of more in these localized areas in Minnesota, Maine, Montana, Colorado, Idaho, Washington, and Alaska. This is another map from NatureServe, and it's kind of shows the entire Canada lynx range. Basically, all the blue, they're doing just fine, but as you can see in the lower 48, there is concern about their population. And we can look at, the lower 48. This is also from NatureServe. This is a distribution map, so you can kind of see where the populations are a little more localized now. So in 2014, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service designated critical habitat. And so this is kind of the areas where they have laid out that are most important for lynx, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But we should all feel very blessed to be in a critical habitat of lynx right here. So this is one of the important areas for lynx in the lower 48 that we help to manage and conserve and improve. So their habitat, like I said, they occur in boreal forests. They mostly use carnivorous, using both mature and regenerating forests that provide a lot of horizontal cover. So kind of what I mean by that is a lot of the dense understory and stuff like that. I'll show some examples. But from a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service report in 2016 or 2017, lynx populations are expected to decrease in abundance due to climate-driven habitat loss. So it's important for us to keep track of it. These are some examples of lynx habitat. These are pictures I took while trailing. So they like a lot of this dense understory, a lot of coarse woody debris that provides that horizontal cover that snowshoe hare like, and so they'll follow the snowshoe hare. They're very dependent on them, which we'll talk about. But there's a lot of really fun stuff to walk through in the woods. Norma can attest to that. So a lot of conifer is important, and of course, stuff like that. This is an example, the regenerating side. This is on your left is actually a picture in the Pagami fire scar of regenerating jack pine. And then on the right is a mature forest, but they have, that dense conifer understory as well. This is actually a video that some of our wilderness rangers took. Actually, Michaela Klingeman is in the back. She's a wilderness ranger and took this while working near the Pagami, in the Pagami fire scar. So this is a male lynx, and he marks his territory on this fallen log. Hopefully you can see that it's kind of small, but pretty neat.
How can you tell a male?
I can just tell that it's larger and it doesn't have kittens in tow, but I suppose I shouldn't assume. But it is larger than a female typically, but it is hard to tell. You're right, good question. So some of the home range estimates we have gathered from a study that was done by NRRI, UMD, from 2003, I think. I don't exactly remember. 2007, it says right there. From a telemetry study where they had collared lynx. So some of the estimates we got, you can see the males, they venture a lot further. Their home range are much bigger, 18 to 324 square miles. It's pretty big range for them to roam around. The females are much smaller, especially when they are denning or have kittens in tow. They just kind of stick to their more core areas when they're trying to feed kittens and that kind of thing. This is a map from that study, 2003 to 2008. You can see the males went much further. Their home ranges were much larger, and the females just kind of stuck around to their core areas. Thinking about reproduction, they start mating around this time, February, March. The kittens will be born about May, June. They typically have 1 to 5 kittens, but kind of around here, mostly what we see is 2 to 3 kittens when we find them, when we catch up to them in the winter anyway. They'll stay with their mothers for about a year and then start dispersing into their own home ranges once mating season kind of starts again. Oh, there's another video. This Ryan Panese got from one of his trail cameras. It's a little dark, but just thought it was cute, so I threw it in there. So you can see the kittens just following mom. So yeah, we can talk about the lynx snowshoe hare relationship. They're very dependent on one another, or mostly lynx are dependent on snowshoe hare. Snowshoe hare make up 90% of their diet. They do eat other things. We've seen grouse and like squirrels and stuff, but it's mostly snowshoe hare that they're eating. The lynx density, home range, dispersal patterns, reproduction, survival rates are all strongly tied to what's going on with the snowshoe hare population. And snowshoe hares have a very cyclic population cycle. So about every 10 years, they'll be this cycle where they increase and then they crash. And it's about every 10 years they crash. And then the lynx population kind of follows that cycle. And this was actually first documented by the Hudson Bay Company from snowshoe hare lynx returns during the fur trade. And it's actually really neat to have this long of a data set that shows this way back when, from 1821 to 1913. And they have this graph that shows exactly this, which is pretty exciting to see that. Here's another similar one, a little bit more recent data from a kind of more localized Minnesota, Manitoba, and Ontario lynx harvest. It kind of shows a similar every 10-year cycle from trapping. And the Minnesota season closed after 1983, so we don't have exact data from that. But and then this is another long-term study showing the snowshoe hare population from the Yukon. We don't have any studies. There haven't been a ton of studies that are more localized, so we don't have a ton of information on the snowshoe hare population closer to here, but at least from the Yukon, you can see the 1977 to 2015. You can see this cycle. And then circling back to the Hudson Bay Company records, this is a graph. It's a little maybe hard to interpret, but it shows the lynx kind of following that snowshoe hare cycle. So Canada lynx are listed as a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act, which is one of the reasons why we monitor them on the Superior National Forest. You have a question?
Why do the hares have a cycle that goes up and down?
They
These
kind
are rabbits.
yes, yeah. So they kind of hit this carrying capacity. So the increase, and then they hit a carrying capacity. So the resources where they live. Sorry. Okay, so this yes, thank you. So the snowshoe hares, they'll increase their population until they hit a carrying capacity where the environment can't sustain them anymore, and then their population crashes, and then they start back up. And it's about every 10 years that happens. It's kind of like a natural cycle that they get themselves into.
So do
yes.
you think that is across the board, or is it in a specific area? Because what I find out there that I don't think the snowshoe hare populations are really dropping. They may lower in this one area, but the area over here, they're up, you know. So is
yes.
that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Is it more localized? Yes. So Norma is asking, do you think it's more, you know, in certain areas that they have this population cycle? And the question is, we don't really know that. There's not a lot of good studies on snowshoe hare. So especially for this area, we don't really know much about them. So we kind of are just going on what the lynx are doing. So it is a great project for somebody that they should do. So yeah, we would love to know that information. But yeah, we don't have a ton of information on them around here. So did I answer that? Okay, excellent. So they were listed in 2000 as threatened. Their listing was proposed in 1998 by environmental groups when there was evidence that their populations were declining. And the thought was that they were declining as a result of overtrapping and habitat loss and competition with other predators like coyotes, bobcats, and fisher. With the increase in winter recreation that compacts the snow, like snowmobiling and skiing and dog sledding and stuff more into the wilderness, that kind of provides other predators that are not as well adapted to the winter like lynx are to come further into lynx habitat. And so they kind of compete for the same prey. Whereas, you know, before they weren't really able to get deep into lynx habitat as well. So that's kind of has been a concern as well, the increase in snow compaction. So on the Superior, we monitor lynx because they're threatened. And so some of the ways, let's see, we started, so they were listed in 2000 and an interagency lynx detection survey started. nationwide. In 2001, the Superiors began an effort to start collecting genetic DNA or genetic samples from them. And in 2008, we officially kind of created a formal database of DNA samples. And most of the DNA is coming from their scat. So we collect their scat non-invasively. So we'll follow them in the woods, find their poop, collect it, send it in. So, and then we also, we started driving occupancy surveys in 2014. So that just means we been driving roads, skiing or snowmobiling, and documenting where we find them for detection if they're occupying an area. And then we also document when we follow Lynx tracks, we'll document that whole trail and collect some other information that I'll talk about. Yeah, so I kind of already said this, but so we're driving the roads, looking for their tracks. And then when we find their tracks, we'll follow them in the woods. And the goal is to find their scat. And then we'll collect it. And you can see we travel a lot during the winter. And our trailing, we follow tracks 41 to 131 miles each winter on foot, which seems like a lot. So we see a lot of poop. So now you guys get to see a lot of poop. So this is our job. It's like really exciting when you find the poop, you know, and sometimes it's like 5 minutes in a trailing, and then like sometimes you trail for like 2 hours, and then you like finally find the poop, and it's so exciting. So this is what it looks like. They kind of have like blunt edges. There's snowshoe hair mixed in there, and there's usually like a nice squat, so you can see their prints, a nice little squat there. And they like to poop on raised surfaces like rocks and logs, like so. Especially the kittens, they like to find like the highest log possible and poop on top of that. And the one on the far right is actually from the Forest Service office, like right in the parking lot, which is pretty exciting. And so we collect the DNA, we collect the scat. We also collect hair too. We just don't find it as often as scat. And it is a little harder to amplify and get decent DNA out of. But so it's normally scat. We put in a paper bag. We send it to Montana to our genomics lab there. They analyze it for us. We can determine the sex. We can get kittens versus adults. We can see who's the kitten's parents, and we can kind of track the families through the years and see where they go and keep track of that. We can get individual identification, and then we also look for hybridization with bobcats. Hybridization? We'll talk about it. Okay. Yes.
So if you come across some of this, do you want us to do anything?
Yep.
You or?
Absolutely. My contact information's on that paper, and I'll put it up at the end, and we'll talk about that as well. We're all going to get involved, and everyone's going to get excited about lynx and poop. Okay. So, okay, so here's some other things we collect information on when we're trailing. We'll find stuff like beds where they've laid down, sometimes a family bed. It's kind of a big matted down area. This is what they look like. These are hair kills. This is often what we find. We come across a snowshoe hare, crime scene. And it's usually just like a foot and some hair is all that's left. Yeah, yes. And then also we find caches. So sometimes a lynx comes across a hare, and you might as well go ahead and take it, but they're not always terribly hungry. So they'll bury it in the snow. And so sometimes you come across caches. And so it's kind of neat to see that. And then sometimes you accidentally uncover them and then you feel bad. And so you have to cover back up for them. Okay, so here's a summary. This kind of comes from our latest report that isn't quite out yet. It's not totally finished, but this is from 2000 when we started collecting DNA to now. So our database contains 2,943 samples, so most of that is scat. We have found in those 23 years 611 individuals. They're a little bit more males than females, but pretty close. And 2, we couldn't determine the sex. Since 2010, we've had a minimum of 84 family groups and producing 170 kittens. And that's all right here in the Superior, so that's kind of exciting. 15 individuals have persisted over 6 years. Means they've been here and we've collected data on them for 6 years or more. And the longest is a female over 10 years. And I think that she's still out there today, which is pretty exciting. Okay. This kind of will give you a rundown of what last winter looked like. We collected 317 samples just last winter. So from about November 2022 to April or whenever it stopped snowing, 2023. We confirmed 118 individuals right here in Northeast Minnesota. 55 females, 63 males. We had 65 recaptures, which means that we had caught them, meaning we had found their scat and been able to ID them before and found them again this year. 53 individuals were new to the database that we hadn't found previously. And field observations suggest that there were 10 family groups and as many as 18 kittens across the forest. And DNA confirms 10 family groups and 15 kittens. So we almost got, scat from all of them. This is also from the report. This kind of shows you the distribution of Canada lynx detections or where we've collected DNA. So most of them are up in Cook, Lake, and St. Louis County. Occasionally we'll get some from like roadkill and other parts of the state, or if they've just gone somewhere else. But yeah, most of them are coming from, you can kind of see that like Laurentian Divide in that kind of area is mostly where we collect data from. And we don't have a ton of information in the boundary waters. It's just a little bit harder for us to get in there and survey. So we don't have a lot of information on the lynx in the boundary waters. Yeah.
When you say we, how big is your team?
Yeah, so our team is there. So there's 5 districts on the Superior National Forest. There's one in Cook, Ely, Tofty, Grand Marais. Are all of them? Yes. And so there's 1 or 2 people on each of those districts. So our team, we have some vacancies right now, so it's a little small, but about 10 people are out there in the winter surveying. And then Norma, who is our volunteer extraordinaire, she collects a lot of poop for us. So we're very grateful for her. Okay, I think I skipped ahead. Okay, no. Okay, so reproduction, you can kind of see through the years since 2010. So about the last 22 years-ish. It's been fairly stable, I suppose, but this kind of shows you family groups through the years. This is persistence of individuals, so lynx that stick around and we catch them into the next year. A lot of them are kittens, as you can see, and then yeah, we have a few that have been here for a long time. That's a. She asked what the cause of mortality typically is, and I don't know that answer, but I will look it up and I will email you. Okay, thank you. Okay, I talked about this. Did I? Improvement survivorship. I don't know. Okay. So we've also been kind of working on some other projects, collaborating with other researchers around the area. And since 2018, researchers have worked with us to use our DNA and kind of calculate trend and density for the lynx population in Northeast Minnesota. So you can kind of see, and this is using our capture, mark, recapture, which that means we've found their scat and then we have refound their scat. So that's kind of, it says capture, but that just means we've, got their DNA. We're not actually capturing the lynx. And I think I had notes on this, so let me flip. Okay. So yeah, these are point estimates. And this is, okay, I guess I already said that. But this is from areas that were consistently surveyed, like the larger core areas that are regularly surveyed each winter. That's what that's using. And then we've also started a pilot study with North Carolina State University, working with researchers there to create a occupancy model for this area. And so this is kind of what that looks like, and we're still continuing to refine that, and smart people are working on this, and I don't have a lot of answers for it, so. Okay, and here's the hybridization. So occasionally lynx and bobcat will interbreed, and so they create a hybrid. And we occasionally get them in our database, but it's not annually. The first hybrid was found in 2001. It was from an animal that was killed by a train, and we collected the carcass and got DNA from it. Our database contains 44 samples of 13 individuals. All of the samples are F1 hybrids, so the first generation of a lynx and a bobcat. And all of the offspring were of male bobcat and female lynx. So we don't get them every year. We haven't had one for a few years, but occasionally they show up.
Do they, the hybrids reproduce, or does that end?
I mean, I'm not sure. I don't have the answer to that. I wonder if they can't because we've only found F1s, but I don't know the answer to that. But we could look it up if you want to send me an email. Perhaps, yeah. But I think that even if an F1 hybrid mated with a lynx or bobcat, I guess if it mated with a lynx, we might still detect it. I'm not sure. I mean, we just haven't found them, so I can't answer questions that aren't in our database. I'm not sure. Yes.
Well, we read somewhere that back in the day that long before they confirmed natives, trappers and fur buyers expected this quite a long time ago.
I'm sure that is the case. I'm not totally versed on the history of that, but yeah, it's a good question, and I will definitely look that up when I get back. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Third difference, morphology or what they look like.
Sure. Well, we are concerned with hybridization. If a hybrid, well, in general, we are concerned with hybridization because it definitely will delete the gene pool for lynx, and we want to conserve the lynx. But it also could, those adaptations that lynx have for deep snow and cold winters, it could like dilute those genes as well. So they might not be able to survive in an area like this as well if they're not like fully lynx and can float on top of the snow like a regular one. But yeah, does that answer your question? Hopefully.
Haven't found any
The actual,
bodies or whatever.
I think there are studies on that have actual critters in hand, but I don't know right off the top of my head right now.
The one hybrid that I know of that was found at the mine in Babbitt, it had small feet, small paws, difficult to follow.
Yeah.
So this should be okay with
Yeah, yeah, right. Yes. Yeah, in a changing climate, yeah, the bobcats will be able to, survive up here a lot easier. So, okay. So talking about the future efforts, we're going to continue building on our database of DNA, continue refining our models with researchers, like I said before. We're hoping to get some funding to do some snowshoe hare research with UMD researchers, hoping to learn more about snowshoe hares, their habitat, and that kind of thing, help us with habitat management on the forest. And my goal is to get you more involved, all of you, because you're going to love it. And so one of the ways that you can help is spread the word. A lot of people don't even know that we have Lynx here and that the Superior does work with Lynx. And so it's, important to spread the word about it. That's why I'm here today. And you could also report illegal trapping and mortalities if you see them or happen upon them. Let us know about sightings, get videos. We have a lot of, there's a lot of trail cameras out there in the forest. We get really great videos from people that have those Ring cameras at their cabins. I know a lot of you live out in the woods, on the lakes. So, I'm sure you have Lynx in your backyard. And so we would love to know about that. Help document across the forest. You learn how to ID Lynx tracks, educate yourself on habitat and more about Lynx. They're just really cool cats. So it's super fun. Yeah, so one of the ways you can report a sighting, collect coordinates are great, but I know not everyone is capable of that. But location is really important, so we can add that to our database when people see Lynx and that kind of thing. Yeah, if you have videos or pictures, trail cameras, like I said, like those are all really helpful. Okay, this is from Steve and Cindy Brodigan, their Ring camera that they let me share. And see, this is what's in their backyard, which I think is awesome. And this is really helpful information. So we know that there's a family in this area. And we can, try and, pinpoint where they are, try and get enough scat from them. But it's good to know about families like this. So, yeah.
What kind of camera were you saying?
A Ring, it's like what people use. It's just like the brand name, but it's kind of like, I guess I've never actually seen one, but I think they're like high-tech-ish security cameras that are kind of like, it'll go to your phone and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like cameras that are like security cameras that people have out. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick field guide on how to identify Lynx tracks. They're very round, and like most felines, their claws don't show because they have retractable claws, unlike canines. So it'll be a very round print. They're very clean. They float on top of the snow. They don't sink a whole lot, except in certain conditions, but most of the time they're floating on top. They have a nice clean trail. They're pretty large, but almost 4 inches wide. Here is compared to wolf tracks. I don't know how helpful the hand is, but you can kind of see they're almost comparable to a wolf track, but they're very clean. Wolf tracks have their claws showing typically. And even in low snow, they will drag. You'll see like their claws dragging, and they're much heavier than a lynx. So they're sinking in the snow and creating these really messy trails. So if we see something like that, we don't even worry about it. We know it's not a lynx, because lynx are tidy and they don't mess up the snow. Okay, I guess I already said this. Yeah, so you can draw an X through a wolf track, or they're diamond shaped, some people say, whereas lynx tracks are very circular. These are snowshoe hare tracks, and sometimes they can look like lynx tracks, but often you find them together. They're hunting for snowshoe hare, but they have these two really big ones and then the small ones. Their back legs are really big, and then their fronts. This is typically what they look like. But I've definitely had people show me a snowshoe hare track and tell me it's a lynx track. I'm like, well, you got to look at the whole thing. But it can be tricky because there's a lynx track right there mixed in with the snowshoe hare trail. So it gets kind of tricky when they're on the same path. You got to follow them through the woods and figure out where they went. Here's some other trails. These are some mustelids we have, so marten and fisher. And do you have a question? Do the lynx climb trees? I believe they do. They at least climb like logs and stuff. I'm sure they do climb trees, but I'm not totally sure how long they stay in a tree. I think like a lot of the kittens will be like playing around, jumping on logs, and they'll scratch on trees. When you're following them in the woods, you can see where they've scratched on a tree. But I don't know if you know, Norma, if they've
I think they do, but I don't know how long.
Yeah. I don't think they necessarily like hang out in a tree, but no, snowshoe hare, yeah. I think they get kind of just lucky with snowshoe hare because it usually doesn't seem like much of a chase. It just happens to be there and they pounce on it from my experience. But so here's some of our mustelids. There's a fisher on the right side of the screen. They have fooled me before. They do kind of look similar if they're not showing their claws. But in deeper snow, they'll be dragging more when they're walking. And they also have, they'll usually show 5 pads as opposed to 4, like a lynx does. And then there's a marten in the middle here. And just like pretty typical with mustelids, they'll have these 2 offset tracks, and they kind of like bound like that. And fisher will do that too. And this is the bottom one is a fisher walking, so you can tell it's a lot smaller of an animal because the tracks are much closer. But sometimes they can often look like lynx tracks just because they're also kind of round. But
Ron, do you have a question?
On the Ely Naturalist Group website, there was a question of somebody was asserting that the lynx front number of toes versus the back toes number is different.
I believe they're the same, but the front feet are bigger than the back feet. So, but I believe the toes are.
Anybody remember that? Just last month. Four on the front, 5 on the back.
I think mustelids are on that.
Yeah, mustelids, marten, and fisher, they have 5 pads.
Oh, this was lynx.
Yeah, lynx have
Didn't make sense.
sometimes they'll step in their own track, and there might not be exactly in there, so it might look like there's another toe sometimes, but they have 4 pads, 4 toe pads. Well, that was it. So thank you. And if anyone has questions, I hope you do. Okay.
We have lots of very eager people. Hang on, Rusty, I'll give you the microphone.
Your handout says that it's in opposition to what you said.
Oh,
Lake tracks do show claws.
did I? Oh, that's a typo.
Okay.
That's embarrassing.
Do you find that lynx are migrating into this area?
Well, this is actually at the southern edge of their range. So, it is expected with climate change and that kind of thing that they'll be kind of moving more north. But sometimes in the winter, if populations of snowshoe hare have crashed up north, we sometimes have lynx come down to this area and are, hanging out and hunting for food. So there's a little bit of that. Well,
There you go.
Since the mating season is coming up, would we be able to go out at night and be able to distinguish any certain vocalizations from a lynx and recognize it as a lynx?
you could. It is not the nicest sound in the world. But yeah, I think it's a little rare to hear that. But I mean, you certainly could hear sometimes the males they'll call out to the females and this kind of thing. It's like thing. So
I just had a question. We have small dogs. Are they in any like danger from lynx, or lynx just ignore dogs?
I don't think they care about your dogs. Yeah. They're just looking for snowshoe hare, an easy meal.
I have a question about snowshoe hares.
Uh-huh.
Do they have more than one reproductive cycle per year?
Yes,
So that serves lynx in some regards?
yes, they do have more than one cycle. I don't exactly. Can you just look this up?
I thought it was 4 or 5 cycles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like rabbits.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
I have two questions. What is the length of the adult male from like nose to tail? And the second question is, what is the size of the poop? It looks like a little bullet. What's the size of that?
sure. I think there's a ruler next to one of these. I don't know the length of a male, but I could probably look it up, or we could look through. Hold on, let me find the poop because I think there's a ruler next to it. But it would fit in your hand if you wanted to do that. Yeah. Great. Great. Yeah, yes, exactly. Wolf poop smells disgusting, but lynx poop is all right. Yeah, it kind of depends, I guess, on how big the lynx is, but typically lynx scat will have like blunt edges. It'll have the little hair coming out of the end. Often with I think fox is like this, but mustelids as well. It's kind of like twisty and there's a lot like more hair in it. I just kind of think lynx is like a little more put together. It's a little like cleaner, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Here you go.
Are they nocturnal? I see these pictures in the daytime, but.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any like actual evidence of that, but I mean, people see them daytime, nighttime, anytime. So, as far as I know, they just kind of do whatever they want whenever they want. So it doesn't seem like they are tied to nocturnal but I think that snowshoe hare are more nocturnal. So I think they probably do most of their hunting during the night.
I have a question for you, Taylor.
Yes.
So what else does your job as a wildlife technician entail? Because I don't think you're like a full-time lynx trailing person.
Right.
And what compelled you to get into this kind of work originally? I know you said that you've done it all around the country. How did you decide to aspire to that?
Oh gosh. Okay. Okay, well, I guess first answer to the first question. Yeah, with the Forest Service, we do a lot of different things. I feel really lucky to be able to, have place in all kinds of different things. So we'll monitor threatened, endangered, and sensitive species. So like the Canada lynx, we have wood turtles that we monitor. We monitor goshawks on the forest. Bats, yes, we contribute to nationwide databases of bats and songbirds. We have a couple of banding stations that we manage. Owls, we do owl surveys, and we have several different owl projects going on. Anything else I'm missing? You guys are being really good with this. Can't think of anything. We manage the land, improve habitat for different species like moose, especially, definitely lynx. Yeah, kind of that. How did I get into this? I like being outside, and I wanted a job where I could be outside. And being with the Forest Service has really been able to like get behind the scenes a little bit more and help manage that habitat and improve habitat for the future and our future, for our wildlife. So I like being part of that.
Thank you.
Of depends on what you're talking about, but yes. So like for moose, oftentimes it is involved with timber harvest, and then we will we'll keep monitoring that area, and then we'll plant usually long-lived conifers, and then just basically like adding diversity into stands, and also thinking about like thermal cover for moose as well. So providing foraging and thermal cover, usually next to like wetlands and that kind of thing. Prescribed burning as well. Yeah, especially for moose. That's what comes to mind. Yeah.
Do you have evidence of cougars in the area?
We have not found any during our winter tracking. There are definitely trail camera videos and pictures of mountain lions, but we'd really like to get a sample in our database, but we haven't found any in the winter. So, but I know they're around. Everybody seems to think so, and there's pictures and that kind of thing. But yeah.
I have one comment. If you're going out and you find what you think is a lynx, don't tell us next week. It does us no good. We need to know immediately. And also, if it's on your land, if you have permission to go hunt on your land, hunt for the scat. Because once it snows, forget it. It covers the track. So we need to know immediately. Thank you.
Yeah, and my contact information is on that one sheet that's around that I did a typo on. Sorry about that. And there are some annual reports laying around. I didn't print out a ton because I didn't think anyone would be that interested in it because it's kind of boring. But it's also from 2 years ago. It's not the most recent one because it's not finished yet. But if you're interested in it and you didn't get one, I can email you one. My contact information is around, and I'm sure that Lacey can also send it out as well if you don't have it. But it is here somewhere. But otherwise, yes, it is. Way too many. There it is. I screwed up the thing, but yes. Yep, if you need anything. Yes, thank you.
Taylor.